From Studio 1Z, with the latest news, commentary, and weather, it's the KZRG Morning News Watch on Newstalk, KZRG.
It is FM 102.9, 105.9, AM 1310. And on your smart speaker, it's Newstalk, KZRG. Ted Bojorquez.
Steve Scott.
And joining us live on Newstalk KZRG is Missouri gubernatorial candidate Mike Kehoe. Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, how are you doing this morning?
Ted, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I love being on hold and hearing the weather forecast because I have hay down. So when I heard no rain in the four-state area, that excited me.
Well, I'm glad we could help you out this morning, Lieutenant Governor. Now, Mike Kehoe, you are running for Missouri governor, and I know you've been very vocal on dealing with migrants in the state of Missouri, specifically when it comes to cartels pushing drugs in the Show Me State. In regards to the drug issue in Missouri, can you give us a step-by-step plan on how you envision cleaning up or at least putting a dent in Missouri's drug overdose issue if elected to governor?
You bet. Well, Ted, that's a great question, and it's on everybody's mind. I'm the only candidate who's been to the border not once but twice with National Guard troops and with Missouri Highway Patrol. I've seen firsthand what is happening at our border, and that's why all of the statewide law enforcement agencies have decided to endorse me to help with this plan to stop the illegal drugs that are coming across. You know, just last year at one border crossing in McAllen, Texas, we seized 450 lethal doses of Chinese-made fentanyl. That's enough to kill 450 million. That's enough to kill the U.S. population 1.3 times over. The answer to the question is, how do we stop that, is we will propose and get legislation passed. I've already talked to leaders in both the House and Senate that if you sell fentanyl in our state, you're going to be charged with attempted murder. And if you sell fentanyl that unfortunately results in fatality, we're going to charge you with murder and send you to the death penalty. We're going to send a message to the drug cartels that you're not welcome in Missouri. And if you're here peddling that product, we're going to put you in jail in a place you don't want to be. And so the law enforcement officers feel very confident that that will really help us send a clear message. And number two, we're going to give the tools to law enforcement all across the state. So when they capture an illegal alien, because there's not like a database of who's out there, when they capture them, we're going to give them the tools to get that person out of our state, sent back to their country. We know how to control illegal immigration here in Missouri, and we're going to get that done.
Now, Missouri gubernatorial candidate Mike Kehoe here on Newstalk KZRG. This was an issue that has been coming up as we're getting closer and closer to the primaries here in Missouri, which is on August 6th. In your political history, you had voiced support for a gas tax increase, and some voters are pointing to that as evidence to suggest that if elected, you would be on the side of tax hikes. How would you respond to those voters? What would you say to that?
Well, I would be happy to say I was the first candidate in this race to sign the Grover Norquist tax pledge, no new taxes as governor, period. No other candidate beat me to signing that pledge. And I've supported over $2.4 billion of tax cuts since I've been in office that puts money back into Missourians' pockets. I would suggest that I probably have, and I do have, the best tax cut record and the best record of making sure Missourians know there'll be no new taxes under a Mike Kehoe administration.
Missouri gubernatorial candidate Mike Kehoe here on Newstalk KZRG. So for people that point to that specific instance in your legislative history, give us a quick little synopsis here. I don't want to just dig up old stuff, but what was your thinking on the gas tax hike at the time?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm an infrastructure Republican. The last time you saw a gas tax, it was in the early 90s, and it was proposed and signed by then Governor John Ashcroft. And Governor Ashcroft has been on the record many times of telling people that the conservative way to address a transportation problem is to present a solution. The legislature presented a solution a couple of years ago as lieutenant governor, so I didn't actually vote on it, but I certainly was aware that there was an option out there for a user fee increase in the gas, one that is also rebatable to Missourians, so Missourians can get that money back if they don't feel like that's appropriate. But there's many Republicans across the decades, including Governor Ashcroft, who have supported infrastructure investment. So that's not new to the Republican Party. They understand that that is what it takes to keep our economy going, our roads safe, and Missouri on the right track.
It's Missouri gubernatorial candidate Mike Kehoe here on Newstalk KZRG. Mike Kehoe, I know this is kind of a specific issue here, but we have a lot of listeners and we get a lot of comments about this topic, and that is the possibility of the Chiefs and the Royals moving to the Kansas side of the Kansas City metropolitan area. What is your stance on Missouri providing tax incentives or offering Missouri money to build a new stadium or incentivize them to stay? If governor, would you advise and lead the legislature to create a way to fund a new stadium? What's your stance on that?
Well, listen, I do not think we should take taxpayer dollars to build stadiums, but I do think we should look at the Chiefs and Royals like any economic development opportunity we would have or potential loss we would have, that if they were a widget company that was located on the border somewhere and said, we're moving out of state, but our company produces this many jobs and this many hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue to the state of Missouri, everybody and their brother would be trying to figure out a way to keep that business, that widget manufacturing in Missouri. It's no different with these two franchises. They might have NFL and MLB behind their name, but they produce a significant amount of economic development revenue to our state, and we need to make sure we do everything we can, ensuring it's a good return to taxpayers. It can never be a deal that's not a good return on investment, but ensuring that we can keep a good return on investment, we need to do what we can to keep those teams in Missouri, to keep that economic impact and those jobs here. And look, we already have a stadium, so it's, Kansas would have to build one from scratch. Whether we could remodel and refabricate Arrowhead the way it is, that's another conversation, but there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. I would just ask Missourians to look at it like an economic development loss that we don't want to happen. We don't want the revenue, the jobs, and the money that comes in those franchises to be in another state. We'd like to keep that impact here as long as it's a good investment, return on investment for Missourians.
Missouri gubernatorial candidate Mike Kehoe here on Newstalk KZRG. Another big issue that Missouri voters are very keen on discussing and a little worried about is foreign actors, particularly China, buying up Missouri farmland. Now, it's a subject of grave concern amongst a lot of voters. As part of your campaign, and you have said numerous times that you are opposed to allowing foreign companies and foreign nations buying up Missouri farmland. Again, bringing up your legislative history, there is evidence that you voted for the sale of Missouri land to foreign companies previously. What changed your mind between then and now? And if elected governor, how can you ensure voters that you won't change it back to allowing the sale of Missouri land?
Well, let me just be clear. I have been on the record for several years of saying we should not sell land or businesses. You should not balance this problem on the backs of Missouri's farmers, by the way. So any land or businesses, any assets to the enemies of our country, there's not many. There's about 7. It's who you would think: China, Russia, Venezuela, etc. They would definitely not be allowed to purchase land and or businesses in a Kehoe administration here. We've been crystal clear on that. The thing that everybody keeps referring to was back in 2013, the relationship that the U.S. had with multiple countries was very different back then, and it was a 450 jobs that people were trying to save up in northwest Missouri where they don't have that many jobs. U.S. Senator Eric Schmidt, current Governor Parson, many people in your area, Ron Richard, former Senator Ron Richard, et cetera, all support the same thing: save those jobs and keep those Missourians working. But, 12 years ago, the relationship we had with multiple countries was much different than it was today. Times have changed. We need to change our policy. I am rock solid on enemies of our country not owning anything in our state.
Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe here on Newstalk KZRG. Lieutenant Governor Kehoe, we are up against the clock here, but I have one final listener question that somebody texted in. Michael texted in this following question. All the gubernatorial candidates have similar talking points. I would like to know what sets Mr. Kehoe apart from the field. What would you say to that?
Well, that's a great question from him, and I'll be as brief as I can. It's the background in my life history that I've grown up in. Raised by a single mother, we didn't have a penny when we were growing up. We pulled ourselves up from the bootstraps. I know what hard times is, and I know what hard work can do to get you out of hard times. I've been incredibly blessed to be able to go on and operate several businesses, created hundreds of jobs across the state. No other candidate has done that. I'm a first-generation farmer, 40 years in the cow-calf business. I understand Missouri's agriculture industry. It's our number one industry. I will protect that as well. And last but not least, I'm a Christian conservative. It's who my mother made me. I will never leave my Christian conservative values, and they know they can depend on me to use that as my guide as I govern.
Missouri gubernatorial candidate Mike Kehoe here on Newstalk KZRG. Mike Kehoe, if people want to learn more about your campaign, where do they go?
Sure. It's MikeKehoe.com, MikeKehoe.com. We'd love them to go on there. There's a 2-minute video that Michael and other listeners can watch called Living Proof, and I think once they watch that video, they'll know what differentiates me from the rest of the field.
Love to hear it. Missouri gubernatorial candidate Mike Kehoe, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Ted. It's always a pleasure.
We'll talk to you again soon. It's Newstalk KZRG.